I came home that afternoon with a sense of relief, thinking I'd finally escaped the crushing demands of the office. The city's bustling chaos seemed a distant memory as I walked up the path to our front door. My mind was preoccupied with the upcoming quarterly report, the numbers that never seemed to add up, and the endless string of meetings. Little did I know that the moment I stepped through that door would shatter my world in ways I couldn't have imagined. As I opened the door, I was greeted by an unusual silence. The hum of the house, usually filled with the gentle noise of everyday life, was conspicuously absent. Katie's laughter, which often echoed through the halls, was nowhere to be heard. I shrugged off the odd feeling and moved through the house, heading straight for the study where I planned to catch up on some work. But as I walked past our bedroom, something caught my eye. The door was slightly ajar, which was unusual. Katie was meticulous about keeping things in order, always closing doors behind her. Especially when she was alone. A faint, lingering scent of perfume drifted out, a fragrance that wasn't hers, a red flag, but one I brushed aside at first. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pushed the door open wider. The room was bathed in the soft light of the setting sun, casting long shadows on the polished wooden floor. I saw Katie's desk, her elegant desk lamp casting a warm glow over an array of neatly stacked papers. My gaze was drawn to an envelope lying open on the desk. Its contents partially visible. Without thinking, I walked over and picked up the envelope. It was addressed to Katie, but the sender's name made my stomach churn: Nathan Bryan. My mind raced. Nathan Bryan was a local surgeon, well respected in the community, my wife's lover. I tore open the envelope with trembling hands and pulled out a folded letter. The letter inside was written in a flowing, elegant script. As I read, my heart sank with each line. Nathan's words were filled with affection and longing, his expressions of love and promises of a future together. The letter was filled with intimate details, plans to meet, secret dates, and confessions of how deeply he felt for her. The pain was raw and immediate, like a physical blow. As I struggled to process the letter's content, my gaze fell upon a small, leather-bound photo album on the corner of the desk. I opened it slowly, my hands shaking. The album was filled with photographs of Katie and Nathan, taken in various locations, restaurants, parks, and even what looked like a weekend getaway. Each photo depicted them smiling, holding hands, their faces flushed with the excitement of a forbidden romance. The images were a stark reminder of the betrayal that had been unfolding behind my back. My breath grew shallow as I flipped through the album, each page revealing more of their secret life together. There were pictures of them in intimate settings, their faces close, eyes full of affection. The final photo was of Katie and Nathan in a tender embrace. Their eyes locked in a gaze that spoke of something deeper and more personal than I ever wanted to know. The album fell from my hands, and I stumbled back, my back hitting the edge of the desk. I felt a wave of nausea as I sank into the nearest chair, the letter and photos spread out before me. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I had built my life with, had been living a double life. The shock and betrayal were almost too much to bear. I needed to think, to plan, to confront this devastating reality. As the sun set and the room darkened, I sat alone in the study, surrounded by the evidence of my wife's infidelity. The world outside seemed to have faded away, leaving me in a cold, harsh reality I had never anticipated. This was only the beginning, and I knew that the path ahead would be fraught with difficult decisions and painful confrontations. But for now, all I could do was sit in the darkness, grappling with the enormity of what I had just discovered. In the days that followed the harrowing discovery of Katie's betrayal, I found myself consumed with a singular focus: Nathan Bryan. If I was going to confront this situation, I needed to arm myself with every piece of information I could gather about the man who had wormed his way into my wife's life. The more I knew, the better equipped I'd be to take him down. My first step was to delve into Nathan's professional background. I knew he was a highly regarded surgeon in Riverside, but I needed to dig deeper. I began by combing through every available resource: medical journals, hospital reviews, and local news articles. I wanted to understand the full extent of his reputation and any potential weaknesses. I started with Nathan's credentials. According to his official profile on the hospital's website, he had an impressive educational background. Graduating from a prestigious medical school, he completed his residency at one of the top hospitals in the country. His list of publications in medical journals was extensive, and his accolades were numerous. Nathan was portrayed as a highly skilled and dedicated professional, one who had earned the trust and respect of both his peers and patients. But I needed more than just professional accolades. I turned to local news archives and social media to find out more about Nathan's personal life. I discovered that he had been active in various community organizations, from charity fundraisers to health awareness campaigns. His public image was that of a generous and compassionate individual, traits that made him even more dangerous. His carefully cultivated persona hid any potential cracks in his armor. I shifted my focus to Nathan's personal life. Using social media platforms, I dug through his profiles and those of his friends and acquaintances. I found pictures of him with his family, his wife, Laura, and their 2 children. They appeared to be the perfect family, often featured in posts celebrating holidays and family milestones. There were also interactions with other local professionals, including positive comments from patients praising his work. But even the most carefully curated lives often have hidden facets. I decided to investigate further into Nathan's professional dealings. I reached out to contacts in the medical field, both through formal channels and informal networks. Through these conversations, I learned about a few troubling aspects of Nathan's career. One source mentioned that Nathan had been involved in a malpractice lawsuit a few years back. Though it had been settled out of court, the case had stirred some controversy. The details were murky, but there were whispers of negligence and substandard care that had led to a patient's unfortunate outcome. This was the crack in Nathan's professional facade I had been looking for. I also discovered that Nathan had been part of several high-profile medical projects that had failed to deliver on their promises. These projects, which had initially garnered significant media attention, were later criticized for their lack of success. This failure wasn't enough to tarnish his reputation completely, but it suggested that Nathan had vulnerabilities that could be exploited. With this information in hand, I began to map out Nathan's social and professional connections. I created a detailed dossier on him, noting key contacts and potential allies who could be leveraged to further my objectives. I also compiled a timeline of his professional achievements and setbacks, looking for patterns or recurring issues that might be exploited. To gain a deeper understanding of Nathan's influence and the extent of his network, I attended a few local charity events and medical conferences where he was scheduled to appear. Observing him in person allowed me to gauge his interactions with others and identify any potential allies or rivals within his circle. In these settings, I carefully noted who Nathan associated with and how he conducted himself. I watched how he presented himself to the public, his demeanor with colleagues, and how he handled difficult questions or topics. This first-hand observation provided valuable insights into his character and his vulnerabilities. The more I uncovered about Nathan Bryan, the clearer it became that while his public image was nearly flawless, there were underlying issues and weaknesses that could be exploited. My research had provided me with a solid foundation, but the real challenge lay in how I would use this information to bring about the downfall of the man who had caused me so much pain. Armed with this knowledge, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. The pieces were falling into place, and I was beginning to see how I could dismantle Nathan's carefully constructed life. This was only the beginning of a much larger plan, one that would require careful execution and strategic thinking. But for now, I had the information I needed to start plotting my next move. The day I reached out to Emily was a turning point in my plan. I needed someone who could understand the depth of my betrayal and provide the insight I was lacking. Emily and I had been friends for years, and her own painful experience with deceit had made her the ideal confidant and ally. I knew her perspective could offer invaluable guidance. We met at our usual cafe, a cozy, unassuming spot with soft lighting and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. The place was quiet, perfect for a conversation that I knew would be both intense and delicate. Emily arrived early, already seated at a corner table, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. I took a seat opposite her, feeling the weight of my burden as I began to recount the details of my discovery. I described the evidence I had found, the letters from Nathan, the incriminating photos, and the shock of realizing my wife's betrayal. As I spoke, Emily's face reflected empathy and an understanding that went beyond mere sympathy. Her past of betrayal made her an expert in the feelings I was grappling with. When I finished, Emily took a moment to digest the information. She leaned back, her eyes thoughtful. "James, I know this is devastating," she said, her voice steady. "When I went through something similar, I felt like my world was crumbling. But having a plan can help you regain control. It's not just about revenge, it's about making sure justice is served and that you're not left powerless." We began discussing possible strategies to confront Nathan. Emily's experience with betrayal had given her a nuanced understanding of how to craft a successful plan. We both agreed that it was crucial to gather as much evidence as possible and to use it effectively. With Emily's guidance, we set to work on formulating a strategy to dismantle Nathan Bryan's career. The plan was not merely about retribution but about exposing his flaws and ensuring that he faced the consequences of his actions. Our priority was to gather concrete evidence about Nathan. We meticulously compiled all the information I had collected about his malpractice lawsuit, his failed medical projects, and any other professional missteps. This included detailed timelines and context for each issue, making it clear that Nathan's failures were not isolated incidents but part of a troubling pattern. Next, we focused on how to present this information to the public. Emily had significant experience in digital marketing and social media, so she took the lead in crafting a narrative that would resonate with people. We decided to write a series of articles highlighting Nathan's failures. These articles would be carefully worded to emphasize the seriousness of his professional shortcomings and to cast doubt on his competence as a surgeon. We also planned a strategic social media campaign. Emily and I created anonymous accounts to distribute our content, ensuring that the information would spread widely and attract attention without revealing our identities. The goal was to generate buzz and stir public interest in Nathan's questionable practices. To amplify our efforts, Emily leveraged her connections in the media. She reached out to journalists and bloggers who had previously covered medical scandals, pitching Nathan's story as a compelling piece of investigative journalism. By framing the story as a matter of public interest, we hoped to secure coverage that would put additional pressure on Nathan and his professional standing. Anticipating that Nathan would attempt to defend himself, we gathered testimonials from former patients and colleagues who had witnessed or experienced Nathan's problematic behavior. These testimonials would serve as additional support for our claims and help counter any counter-arguments Nathan might present. We carefully timed the launch of our campaign to coincide with a major medical conference where Nathan was scheduled to speak. This timing was strategic, aiming to maximize the impact of our revelations and ensure that Nathan's reputation would be under intense scrutiny during a high-profile event. Throughout the process, Emily and I remained vigilant, monitoring the media coverage and public response to our campaign. We adjusted our strategy as needed, responding to new developments and ensuring that our story stayed relevant and impactful. Handling the fallout from our actions was another critical aspect of our plan. Emily's own experiences had taught her the importance of being prepared for potential backlash. We discussed strategies for managing any negative reactions from Nathan's supporters or legal consequences that might arise. By the time we put our plan into motion, Emily and I were confident that we had crafted a thorough and effective strategy. The evidence was compelling, the campaign was well organized, and our approach was methodical. We aimed to deliver a powerful blow to Nathan's career while ensuring that we remained in control of the situation. The day of reckoning had arrived. After weeks of meticulous planning and preparation, it was time to put our strategy into action. Emily and I had crafted a comprehensive campaign to dismantle Nathan Bryan's career, and now, we had to execute it flawlessly. The first phase of our campaign involved social media. Emily and I had spent countless hours creating anonymous accounts on various platforms, each carefully crafted to look like independent voices concerned about public health and transparency. We began by posting a series of articles that detailed Nathan's professional failures. These articles were designed to grab attention, with provocative headlines like "The Hidden Failures of a Prominent Surgeon" and "The Truth Behind Nathan Bryan's Medical Projects." The content was carefully written to highlight Nathan's malpractice lawsuit and the controversies surrounding his failed projects. We included excerpts from patient testimonials, emphasizing the negligence and poor care Nathan had allegedly provided. The posts were accompanied by links to additional sources and documents, adding credibility to our claims. We made sure to use engaging visuals and infographics to make the posts more shareable and impactful. Simultaneously, we launched a parallel campaign in the local media. Emily used her connections to pitch Nathan's story to several journalists and news outlets. We provided them with the same evidence we had used for our social media campaign, framing it as an exposé on a prominent figure who had betrayed public trust. The articles published in local newspapers and online news sites mirrored our social media posts, amplifying the reach of our message. Our next move was to issue a series of public statements. Emily and I wrote a carefully crafted press release that detailed Nathan's alleged failings. We sent this press release to local news outlets and healthcare blogs, ensuring it reached a wide audience. In the release, we emphasized the importance of transparency in the medical field and called for an investigation into Nathan's practices. The press release was designed to create a sense of urgency and public concern. We also orchestrated a strategic release of rumors and gossip. Through our anonymous social media accounts and carefully placed leaks, we spread additional information about Nathan's personal life, suggesting that his private issues might be affecting his professional conduct. This included vague, yet suggestive, comments about his relationships and lifestyle. The goal was to sow doubt and create a narrative that Nathan's problems were contributing to his professional failings. In addition to our online and media efforts, I leveraged my contacts to spread the word. I reached out to influential figures in Riverside, including local business leaders and community activists who had connections to the medical community. I shared the evidence we had gathered with them, framing it as a matter of public concern. By enlisting their support, we hoped to add weight to our campaign and generate further public outrage. The timing of our campaign was crucial. We had chosen to launch everything in sync with the major medical conference where Nathan was scheduled to speak. As Nathan prepared for his presentation, our articles and posts started gaining traction. The conference, intended to showcase Nathan's professional achievements, was overshadowed by the mounting controversy surrounding him. Media coverage of the event was flooded with questions about Nathan's integrity and the legitimacy of his practices. As the campaign unfolded, I monitored the response closely. The initial feedback was intense. Social media was abuzz with discussions about Nathan's alleged failures. And local news coverage was dominated by our revelations. The pressure was mounting, and Nathan's once respected reputation began to crumble under the weight of the scrutiny. Emily and I stayed vigilant, ready to respond to any developments or counterattacks from Nathan or his supporters. We continued to push our narrative, adapting our strategy as needed based on the public and media reactions. The campaign had reached a fever pitch, and Nathan's career was on the brink of collapse. By the end of the week, it was clear that our campaign had made a significant impact. Nathan's reputation had been severely damaged, and calls for an investigation into his practices were growing louder. The once celebrated surgeon was now facing a crisis of unprecedented proportions, all thanks to the campaign we had orchestrated. As the dust began to settle, Emily and I reflected on the outcome of our efforts. We had successfully exposed Nathan's flaws and orchestrated a campaign that challenged his professional standing. The sense of accomplishment was tinged with the knowledge that our actions had irrevocably altered Nathan's life. The campaign was over, but its effects would linger, and Nathan's career would never be the same. The impact of our campaign on Bryan's reputation was swift and dramatic. Once we had launched our strategy, it didn't take long for the wave of negative sentiment to gather momentum. The carefully orchestrated exposure of Nathan's failures had set the stage for a broader public reaction. And it quickly became clear that the fallout was severe. The first signs of change appeared on social media. Our posts and articles had ignited a firestorm of debate. People who had once admired Nathan began to question his credibility. The public, initially unaware of his professional shortcomings, now had access to a flood of information that painted him in a troubling light. Comments and shares spread the content rapidly, each new post amplifying the impact of our revelations. The shift in public opinion was evident in the comments sections of news articles and social media posts. Patients who had once spoken highly of Nathan now expressed doubts about his competence. Many shared their own negative experiences or concerns, reinforcing the narrative we had created. The conversations were charged with anger and betrayal, and Nathan's reputation began to erode as more people voiced their discontent. Local media coverage further fueled the growing disapproval. News stories focused on Nathan's alleged failures, with headlines that emphasized the seriousness of the issues we had exposed. Investigative reports delved into his malpractice case, scrutinizing every detail and drawing connections to his recent medical projects. The constant barrage of negative press kept Nathan in the spotlight, ensuring that the public's perception of him remained sharply critical. Nathan's colleagues and peers, who had once respected him, now faced the difficult decision of distancing themselves from him. The medical community, sensitive to issues of credibility and trust, began to question Nathan's competence. Some of his former supporters publicly expressed their concerns, while others chose to remain silent, avoiding any association with him. This professional distancing added another layer of pressure on Nathan, making it clear that his standing within the medical field was crumbling. As the campaign progressed, Nathan's situation worsened. The negative public opinion evolved into outright public humiliation. His once thriving clinic, known for its high-profile clientele and esteemed reputation, began to suffer. Patients who had previously trusted Nathan with their care now sought out other practitioners, fearing that their health could be compromised by the allegations against him. The decline in patient numbers was stark. Appointments were canceled, and the once bustling clinic became eerily quiet. Nathan's staff, facing the brunt of the fallout, struggled to maintain operations amid the growing skepticism and dwindling business. The clinic's financial health deteriorated rapidly, with rumors circulating about potential layoffs and the closure of certain services. Nathan's public appearances became a subject of ridicule. His scheduled talks and conferences were met with protests and vocal criticism. Journalists and reporters seized every opportunity to question him about the allegations, often ambushing him with pointed questions and criticism. The once respected surgeon found himself the target of derision, and his attempts to defend himself only seemed to fuel the public's anger further. The culmination of Nathan's public humiliation occurred when a major medical association, facing pressure from the media and public, called for an official review of his practices. The association's announcement was a severe blow to Nathan's career, as it signaled a formal acknowledgement of the issues we had raised. The review, though not yet complete, was enough to further damage Nathan's credibility and exacerbate the decline in his professional reputation. As Nathan's career and personal life unraveled, I could see the toll it was taking on him. His once confident demeanor had given way to visible signs of distress. He was no longer the esteemed surgeon he had once been. Instead, he was a figure of public scorn and professional disrepute. The campaign had achieved its goal, but the consequences of our actions were evident in Nathan's increasingly troubled existence. The public's judgment had been swift and unforgiving. Nathan's reputation, meticulously built over years of professional success, had been dismantled by the revelations and the ensuing media frenzy. The clinic that had once been a symbol of excellence was now a reminder of his failures. The damage was done, and the public's perception of Nathan was forever altered. The weeks following the public collapse of Nathan Bryan's career were a turbulent time. The media storm had faded, but its aftermath was still very much present. Amid the wreckage of Nathan's professional life, another storm was brewing, one that was intensely personal. Katie, my wife, had been observing the fallout from the sidelines, and it was clear that she was deeply affected by the consequences of my actions. It began with a phone call. Katie reached out to me, her voice tentative and anxious. She requested a meeting, and although part of me wanted to refuse, I agreed. The decision was driven by a mixture of curiosity and a lingering sense of unfinished business. We arranged to meet at a quiet park, a place that had once been a symbol of our happier times together. On the day of our meeting, the park was serene, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had enveloped our lives. Katie arrived early, her appearance a stark reminder of the woman I had once loved. She looked nervous, her face lined with concern. As I approached, I could see the weight of her emotions in her eyes. We sat on a bench under the shade of a large oak tree. The setting was tranquil, but the conversation was anything but. Katie began by expressing her remorse. Her voice was laden with emotion as she apologized for her betrayal. "James," she started, her voice trembling, "I know that what I did was unforgivable. I've seen what's happened to Nathan, and I realize the pain I've caused you. I am truly sorry." Katie's apology was heartfelt, but it came after a period of significant public and professional damage. It was clear that her regret was genuine, but it also felt like an attempt to salvage her sense of peace rather than a true reconciliation. She continued, "I never meant for things to end up this way. I've been reflecting on everything. And I understand now just how deeply I hurt you. I want to make things right. I want us to be together again. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." Her words were a stark reminder of the life we once shared, a life that seemed so distant now. As Katie spoke, I was struck by the complexity of my emotions. There was a part of me that wanted to forgive her, to rebuild the life we had, but another part of me was adamant about the need for accountability. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself as I responded. "Katie, what happened between us was devastating. I'm not sure you fully understand the impact of your actions. The damage isn't just to our relationship, it's to everything we built together and everything I thought I knew about you." Katie's eyes filled with tears. "I do understand, James. I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness. I just want the chance to prove that I can change, that I can be the person you deserve. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Her plea was earnest, but it was clear that my feelings were far from healed. The betrayal had not only shattered our marriage but had also altered my sense of trust and my perspective on our relationship. "Katie," I said, my voice firm, "I appreciate your apology and your willingness to make amends. But this isn't something that can be fixed with promises alone. Trust is something that takes time to rebuild, and right now, I'm not sure it's something I can give." Katie nodded, her shoulders slumping with the weight of my words. "I understand, James. I just wanted to try. I wanted you to know that I am sorry and that I am committed to changing." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our conversation hanging heavily between us. I could see the pain in Katie's eyes, and while part of me felt sympathy for her, I also knew that forgiving her would require more than just an apology. The scars of her betrayal were too deep, and the trust we once had was irrevocably fractured. As we parted ways, Katie's final words were filled with resignation and sadness. "I'll give you space, James. I understand that I've hurt you deeply, and I'm willing to accept whatever decision you make." Watching her walk away, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. The meeting had provided closure in a way, but it also reaffirmed the necessity of moving on. Our relationship had been built on trust and shared experiences, and those had been irreparably damaged. Forgiveness might come in time, but for now, the best course was to focus on rebuilding my own life and finding a path forward. Katie's attempt at reconciliation was a poignant reminder of the complexity of human emotions and relationships. It was a testament to the depth of her regret and the pain that her actions had caused. But it also underscored the reality that some wounds are too deep to heal quickly and that moving on was the only way to truly find peace. The end of the campaign against Bryan marked a turning point not just in Nathan's life but in mine as well. The intense focus on revenge had consumed much of my energy and emotions. But now that the storm had passed, it was time to confront the aftermath and chart a new path forward. Emily and I were left with the task of rebuilding our lives from the ground up. Our first step was to address the emotional and psychological toll that the past months had taken on us. The bitterness and anger that had fueled our campaign were starting to wane, leaving behind a residue of exhaustion and disillusionment. We both realized that while the campaign had given us a sense of purpose, it had also kept us locked in a cycle of negativity. We decided to take a break from our usual routines. Emily suggested a short trip to the coast, a place we had both visited before and had fond memories of. The idea was to get away from the familiar environment that had been tainted by the recent turmoil and to gain some perspective on our lives. The coastal retreat was exactly what we needed. The fresh sea air and the rhythmic sound of the waves provided a soothing backdrop for reflection and conversation. During our time at the coast, Emily and I had long discussions about our future. We talked about our shared experiences and the lessons we had learned from the recent events. It became clear that while our quest for revenge had been a response to betrayal and hurt, it was not a sustainable or healthy way to live. We both wanted to move beyond the pain and negativity that had dominated our lives. Our conversations also touched on the possibility of building a new life together. Emily and I had developed a deep connection during the campaign, forged through shared experiences and mutual support. The idea of starting over, not just as friends but potentially as something more, was both exciting and daunting. We acknowledged the need for honesty and openness in any new relationship, and we were both committed to approaching this new chapter with a fresh perspective. Back in our daily lives, we began making changes to reflect our new outlook. Emily took up a hobby she had always wanted to explore, painting. She found solace in expressing herself through art, and it became a therapeutic outlet for her emotions. I, on the other hand, began focusing on projects that brought me joy and fulfillment outside of work. I rediscovered my passion for writing and started working on a novel, using it as a way to process and articulate my experiences. We also made an effort to reconnect with friends and family, relationships that had been strained during the tumultuous period. It was important for us to rebuild our social support network and to reconnect with the people who had been a positive influence in our lives. We hosted gatherings and dinners, rekindling old friendships and forging new connections. One of the most significant changes was our decision to engage in community service. Both of us wanted to contribute positively to the world and make a difference in ways that were meaningful and constructive. We volunteered at local charities and participated in community events. This involvement provided a sense of purpose and satisfaction, shifting our focus from past grievances to present opportunities for making a positive impact. As the months passed, the wounds from the past began to heal. The pain of betrayal and the intensity of our revenge campaign became distant memories. The process of moving on was not always easy, but it was rewarding. Emily and I found comfort in each other's company, and our bond grew stronger as we navigated this new phase of our lives. Our journey toward rebuilding was a gradual one, marked by small steps and moments of reflection. We learned to appreciate the simple joys of life and to embrace the opportunities that came our way. The experience taught us valuable lessons about resilience, forgiveness, and the importance of moving forward. In the end, the new life we were building was not just about escaping the shadows of the past but about embracing a future full of possibilities. We were determined to leave behind the bitterness and focus on creating a life that was rich in positive experiences and genuine connections. Our past had shaped us, but it no longer defined us. We were ready to face the future with hope and optimism, eager to see where this new path would lead us. As Emily and I settled into our new lives, the shadows of our past continued to linger, casting a subtle yet persistent pall over our attempts to start anew. The betrayal we had experienced and the intense focus on revenge had left deep imprints on our hearts and minds. Despite our best efforts to embrace optimism and positivity, the scars of our past were not so easily erased. Our journey towards a fresh start had been marked by both progress and setbacks. The changes we had made, our new hobbies, renewed friendships, and community involvement, had indeed brought moments of joy and satisfaction. Yet, beneath the surface of our daily routines, a sense of distrust simmered, subtly influencing our interactions with others. The problem was not just with the people we met, it was with ourselves. The experience of betrayal has altered our perception of trust and human nature. We found ourselves questioning the motives of new acquaintances and second-guessing the sincerity of their intentions. What had once been an open, trusting approach to relationships was now tempered by caution and skepticism. Emily and I noticed this shift in our behavior during social gatherings and new interactions. When we met people through mutual friends or community events, there was always an underlying sense of wariness. Conversations that should have been light and enjoyable were sometimes clouded by our internal doubts. We would analyze people's words and actions with a scrutinizing eye, searching for any signs of deception or hidden agendas. This constant vigilance began to take a toll on our social life. Friends and new acquaintances could sense the subtle barriers we had erected, and while they were patient and understanding, the distance between us and them was palpable. Our inability to fully trust others created a barrier that made it difficult to form deep, meaningful connections. The feeling of longing for the past was another challenge we faced. There were moments when I found myself reminiscing about the life Emily and I had before the betrayal. The sense of security and normalcy we once had seemed like a distant, almost unattainable ideal. I missed the simplicity of our previous life, the ease with which we interacted with others, and the trust that had come so naturally. Despite our efforts to embrace the present and build a new future, I occasionally felt a strong pull towards revisiting the past. The familiar routines and relationships we had once cherished seemed like a refuge from the uncertainty and doubt of our current lives. I questioned whether the drastic changes we had made were truly necessary or if they were merely a response to a temporary setback. One evening, as Emily and I sat together at home, the weight of these feelings became too heavy to ignore. The conversation turned to our past and our current state of mind. Emily expressed similar sentiments, revealing her struggles with trust and the nagging sense of loss. James, she said, her voice tinged with frustration, sometimes I just wish we could go back to how things were before all of this. I know it's not possible, but I can't help but miss the way we used to be. Her words resonated deeply with me. I, too, missed the sense of security and trust that had characterized our lives before the betrayal. The longing for the past was a reminder of how profoundly our experiences had changed us. It was a complex mix of nostalgia and regret, and it was clear that moving forward was not just about embracing new experiences but also about coming to terms with the loss of what we once had. We both realized that while the past might hold a certain allure, it was important to focus on the present and future. Returning to our old life was not a viable option, and clinging to it would only hinder our progress. Instead, we needed to find a way to reconcile our past experiences with our current reality. We had to learn to trust again, not just in others but in the possibility of a new beginning. As we talked late into the night, we acknowledged that our journey was far from over. The process of rebuilding trust and finding peace would take time, and there would be moments of doubt and uncertainty along the way. However, we also understood that our past, while influential, did not have to dictate our future. We had the power to shape our lives in a way that honored our experiences while allowing us to move forward. In the end, our story was one of resilience and adaptation. The road ahead would undoubtedly be marked by challenges, but it was also filled with opportunities for growth and renewal. As Emily and I faced our doubts and worked through our distrust, we remained committed to building a future that was not defined by our past but shaped by our willingness to embrace change and find hope in the present.